Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As the fog of chaos enveloped the world, normalcy shattered, revealing a haunting reality. In the quaint town of Millfield, tranquility morphed into chaos, with news of the undead unleashed on humanity. These aren't isolated cases. They proliferated from major cities to obscure towns, leaving no apparent refuge. Amid this horror, Reuben Mitchell, an inhabitant of Millfield, surveyed the streets through his apartment window, blinds interposed. Disheveled and weary, he observed the ghostly boulevard strewn with derelict vehicles and detritus, testaments to the frenzy that transpired. 3 days hence, when the military urged evacuation to secure areas, Reuben's inertia proved fatal, for with his delayed departure, the highways became an impassable maze. Now, Millfield's eerie silence, punctuated only by the infected's shuffling, reigned.
"Hanged I am,"
he despaired, his fingertips leaving impressions on the blinds as he snapped them closed. His food supplies were dwindling, and the electricity had flickered off an hour ago. The water still ran, but who knew for how long? He needed to make decisions. Reuben grabbed his backpack and stuffed it with the remaining protein bars and bottled water. The radio on his kitchen counter crackled with the same automated message that had been repeating for days. "Citizens are advised to proceed to designated evacuation centers. Military personnel will escort survivors to secure locations. Please note, strange behavior has been observed in infected individuals. They appear to target male subjects with increased aggression. Female civilians report significantly fewer confrontations. Reason unknown. Exercise extreme caution." The message looped back to the beginning, but Reuben had stopped moving. That detail about the zombies targeting males more aggressively, he'd heard rumors online before communications collapsed, but the official broadcast confirmed it. The infection somehow altered behavior based on perceived gender. Scientists had been baffled, but survivors had started sharing stories. Men being chased relentlessly, while women could sometimes walk within yards of the infected without triggering pursuit. A crash from the apartment below startled him from his thoughts. They were in the building now. With shaking hands, Reuben grabbed his pocket knife and car keys. The fire escape was his only option. Heart pounding, he climbed out his bedroom window and descended the metal stairs as quietly as possible. His eyes darted frantically between the alley below and the windows he passed. No movement. Not yet. Once on the ground, he crept toward his car, parked in the back lot. He hadn't tried starting it since the evacuation orders came through. But maybe... A low, guttural moan froze him in place. At the entrance to the alley, a figure stood swaying slightly. Even from 30 feet away, Reuben could see the gray pallor of its skin, the vacant look in its eyes. The creature, once a man in business attire, sniffed the air and turned directly toward him. It broke into a stumbling run. Reuben abandoned stealth and sprinted to his car, fumbling with the keys as the moaning grew louder. The engine sputtered once, twice, then roared to life. He peeled out of the lot as the infected man slammed into his rear bumper, leaving a smear of something dark on the trunk. Driving through town was like navigating a nightmare obstacle course. Abandoned vehicles blocked main roads, forcing detours down side streets where more of the infected wandered. Every male zombie Reuben passed seemed to sense him, turning to pursue his car with surprising speed. The few female infected he encountered merely watched his vehicle pass, their dead eyes tracking but bodies remaining stationary. "This is insane," he whispered, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The gas gauge hovered near empty when he spotted the shopping district ahead. Most stores had been looted, their windows shattered, but the large department store at the end of the strip appeared relatively intact. Perhaps its location on the outskirts had spared it from the worst of the initial panic. Reuben parked behind the building, praying the engine noise hadn't attracted attention. He waited, counting to 60 before opening the door. The back entrance to the store had a delivery bay with heavy metal doors. Locked, but one had been pried open just enough for a person to squeeze through. Inside, the store was eerily silent. Emergency lights cast a dim glow across departments. Reuben moved cautiously, grabbing a baseball bat from a toppled sporting goods display. Clothing racks had been ransacked, but not thoroughly. People had grabbed practical items in their rush to flee. He needed supplies, food, medicine, perhaps camping gear. But as he moved through the store, his mind kept returning to the broadcast. The infected targeted males more aggressively. Reuben paused before the women's department. Mannequins in summer outfits stared with blank eyes, their poses frozen in carefree stances that seemed obscene in this new reality. An idea, desperate and wild, formed in his mind. Could he disguise himself? Would the infected be fooled by clothing alone? It seemed ridiculous, yet the broadcast had specified perceived gender as the trigger. The zombies weren't performing DNA tests. They were responding to visual and perhaps olfactory cues. With shaking hands, Reuben grabbed items from the racks, a flowing pink sundress, a white lace cardigan, some strappy sandals. He added undergarments, feeling a strange mixture of desperation and embarrassment, despite being alone in the abandoned store. In the employee lounge, he found a reasonably clean bathroom and locked himself inside. The face that stared back from the mirror looked haggard, his brown hair too short, stubble on his jaw, features angular with stress and fear.
"This is survival,"
he told his reflection firmly, setting down his new acquisitions. Reuben showered in the employee bathroom using bottled water and soap he found. He shaved carefully, wincing as the disposable razor tugged at his skin without shaving cream. The sundress was loose enough to hide his frame, falling to just below his knees. The cardigan covered his shoulders and arms. The sandals were too small, but he managed to squeeze his feet into them. Looking in the mirror, he still saw himself, a man in women's clothing, but maybe in dim light, from a distance. He rummaged through the cosmetics department, grabbing items without much understanding of their purpose. Foundation, lipstick, mascara, blush. He gathered them all, along with makeup remover and moisturizer. After an hour of experimentation and several frustrated attempts, Reuben managed to apply enough makeup to soften his features. The end result wasn't perfect, but it was different. His reflection showed someone that, at a quick glance, might pass as female. A crash from somewhere in the store sent him scrambling to gather his supplies. He stuffed everything into a large purse he'd picked up, along with his original clothes. The baseball bat wouldn't match his new appearance, but he wasn't about to leave it behind. Reuben, or perhaps not Reuben anymore, crept toward the noise. Near the front entrance, a single female zombie had wandered in through broken glass doors. She moved aimlessly between display cases, occasionally bumping into them. Heart-hammering, he decided to test his disguise. He deliberately knocked over a small display of keychains. The zombie turned. Her milky eyes focused in his direction. She sniffed the air. And then, incredibly, she turned away, continuing her mindless wandering. A surge of wild hope filled him. It was working. The disguise was working. Over the next few days, Reuben established a base in the store's stockroom, venturing out only when necessary. Each excursion in his feminine disguise confirmed what seemed impossible. The infected largely ignored him. Occasionally one would glance his way, but without the frenzied pursuit he'd experienced before. The makeup became easier to apply with practice. He found a book on cosmetic techniques in the magazine section and studied it during the long, quiet hours. His hands grew steadier, more confident with each application. 1 week turned into 2. Reuben began to think of his disguise as a separate person, someone he called Shiloh, a name he'd always liked. Shiloh could move through the infected world with relative safety. Shiloh had a chance at survival. She, ventured further from the department store, finding untouched apartments to scavenge. During one of these expeditions, she discovered a small salon and spa, surprisingly intact. Inside, she found professional-grade makeup, hair products, and even some wigs. Shiloh chose a brown wig that matched her natural color, but fell in soft waves past her shoulders. The weight of it felt strange, but not unpleasant. With better cosmetics, she refined her appearance, contouring her face to appear more feminine. The results were startling. The person in the mirror looked less like Reuben playing dress-up and more like Shiloh, a woman navigating the apocalypse. As weeks passed, Shiloh grew more comfortable in her identity. The pink sundress was exchanged for more practical attire, burgundy A-line skirts paired with cream-colored blouses, clothes that allowed mobility while maintaining her protective disguise. She practiced walking, talking, and moving in ways that felt natural rather than performative. One morning, while searching an abandoned pharmacy for medications, Shiloh heard something she hadn't encountered in weeks. Human voices. Female voices. "Check the antibiotics section. Morgan's infection is getting worse." "Already looking. Keep watch by the door." Shiloh froze, clutching her own basket of supplies. After weeks alone, the prospect of human contact was both thrilling and terrifying. What would they make of her? Taking a deep breath, she stepped around the aisle. "Hello?" 2 women spun toward her, one raising a machete defensively. They were both dirty and thin, dressed in practical clothing splattered with dark stains. "I'm not infected," Shiloh said quickly, raising her hands. "I've been surviving at the department store across town." The women exchanged glances. The older one, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a severe bun, lowered her weapon slightly. "You're alone?" she asked. Shiloh nodded. "For about a month now. My name's Shiloh." "I'm Patricia," the older woman said. "This is Deanna. We're with a group of survivors at the old factory north of here." "A group?" Shiloh felt a surge of hope. "How many?" 14 now, Deanna answered, still watching Shiloh carefully. "Used to be 20, but..." She trailed off, the implication clear. "All women?" Shiloh asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, the men in our original group were picked off quickly. Those things hunt them down like bloodhounds. Eventually, we stopped trying to save them. Sounds cruel, but bringing a man into our camp was like ringing a dinner bell." Shiloh swallowed hard. "I've noticed they leave women alone, mostly." "Small blessing in this nightmare," Deanna said, turning back to the shelves. "Pat, I found some amoxicillin. Think this will work?" While they gathered supplies, the women explained their situation. Their group had fortified an old textile factory, setting up living quarters on the upper floors, with access controlled by a single reinforced staircase. They grew vegetables on the roof and collected rainwater in barrels. It wasn't comfortable, but it was safer than constant movement. "You should come back with us," Patricia offered as they prepared to leave. "Strength in numbers and all that." Shiloh hesitated. Living among others meant maintaining her disguise constantly. A single mistake could expose her and potentially endanger everyone, but the prospect of human connection after weeks of isolation was too powerful to resist. "Thank you," she said. "I'd like that." The factory was impressively organized. Women of various ages had created a functional community within its walls. Each person had responsibilities: cooking, guard duty, medical care, maintenance. Shiloh was introduced around and assigned a sleeping area, a corner of the former administrative office with a salvaged mattress and privacy screen. Morgan, the woman with the infection, was resting in the designated medical area. Her leg had been gashed during a supply run, and the wound had festered despite their best efforts at treatment. The antibiotics were their last hope before amputation became necessary. "You have steady hands," observed Eliza, their medic, watching as Shiloh carefully changed Morgan's bandages. "Ever work in healthcare?" "No," Shiloh replied, focusing on the task. "I just learned to be careful with detailed work." Over the following days, Shiloh found her place in the group. Her makeup skills, originally developed for survival, became an unexpected asset. Several women requested her help preparing for supply runs, using cosmetics to disguise themselves as unappealing to any human scavengers they might encounter. The infected might ignore women, but desperate male survivors sometimes posed different dangers. "Where did you learn to do makeup like this?" asked Tanya, a former college student, as Shiloh applied foundation to her cheeks. "You make me look like I've had a fever for weeks." "Self-taught," Shiloh replied, blending the edges carefully. "Amazing what you can learn when your life depends on it." She developed close friendships with several women, particularly Robin, a former librarian with a dry wit who handled the group's inventory. They spent evenings talking about books they'd read, movies they missed, and occasionally the lives they'd lost when the world collapsed. "Sometimes I forget what normal felt like," Robin confessed one night as they sat on the roof, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Having a job, paying bills, worrying about stupid things like being late for dinner reservations. Shiloh nodded. "I think about who I was before, and it doesn't even feel like me anymore." "That's the strangest part of survival," Robin said. "You become someone new, someone you might not even recognize." The weight of Shiloh's secret felt heavier in these moments of genuine connection. Sometimes she considered confessing the truth, but fear always silenced her. What if they cast her out? What if they saw her disguise as deception rather than survival? 3 months into her life at the factory, disaster struck. A horde of infected, larger than any they'd seen before, surrounded the building. Their movement patterns suggested intelligence they hadn't previously displayed. The creatures were testing barriers, seeking entry points.
"They're evolving,"
Patricia said grimly during an emergency meeting. "Becoming smarter, more coordinated." "But why target us now?" asked Deanna. "They've largely ignored us for months." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Several women glanced at each other. "We did take in those new survivors last week," someone suggested quietly. All eyes turned to the 3 newcomers, women they'd found hiding in a convenience store during a supply run. One of them, a tall, athletic woman named Val, stood up defensively. "What exactly are you suggesting?" she demanded. Nobody's suggesting anything, Patricia said firmly. But we need to understand what's drawn them here. That night, Shiloh couldn't sleep. The moaning of the infected outside was constant, a horrific lullaby that set her nerves on edge. She applied and reapplied her makeup, a nervous habit she'd developed when anxious. A scream shattered the pre-dawn silence, followed by the sounds of struggle. Shiloh grabbed her knife and rushed toward the commotion. In the main living area, chaos reigned. Infected had breached their defenses and poured into the lower levels. Women ran in all directions, grabbing weapons and emergency packs. "The back stairwell is clear!" Robin shouted, grabbing Shiloh's arm. "We need to go now!" As they ran, Shiloh noticed something odd. The infected seemed to be pursuing specific targets. They ignored some women completely while chasing others with singular focus. Near the emergency exit, she saw Val fighting off 3 infected with a metal pipe. Despite her strength, she was quickly overwhelmed. With horror, Shiloh realized the truth. The infected weren't evolving. They were still hunting the same prey. Val wasn't a woman at all. "They're like me," she whispered, the revelation stunning her momentarily. Robin pulled her toward the exit. "What did you say?" "Nothing," Shiloh answered, following her friend through the door. Their group fractured during the escape. Shiloh found herself with Robin and 4 others, including one of the newcomers, a quiet woman named Morgan, who limped from her healing leg wound. They took refuge in an abandoned motel 5 miles from the factory, barricading themselves in 2 adjoining rooms. During their first night there, Shiloh woke to the sound of quiet sobs. Following the noise, she found Morgan sitting in the bathtub, fully clothed, shoulders shaking with silent tears. "Are you hurt?" Shiloh whispered, concerned. Morgan looked up, face streaked with tears, and something else. Makeup running in dark rivulets down her cheeks. Their eyes met in mutual recognition. "They hunted us at the factory because of you," Shiloh said softly, without accusation. "You're like me." Morgan nodded miserably. "My real name is Michael. I found out about the infected targeting men when my boyfriend was torn apart right next to me. They ignored me completely once I put on her clothes." His voice broke. "I've been Morgan ever since." Shiloh sat on the edge of the tub. "I'm Reuben, or I was." "Was Val?" "Yes," Shiloh confirmed. "I could tell by how the infected focused on her. The same way they once hunted me." They talked through the night, sharing their stories of transformation and survival. Both had discovered something unexpected in their disguises, a sense of rightness neither had anticipated. "I always felt different," Morgan admitted. "Before all this, I'd sometimes look at women's clothes and wonder. The apocalypse just gave me permission to find out." Shiloh nodded. "At first, it was purely survival for me. But now, I don't think I could go back to being Reuben, even if the world returned to normal tomorrow." "Do you think the others suspect?" "I don't know," Shiloh replied. "But I think some might understand better than we expect." The next morning, Shiloh made a decision. She gathered the small group in their motel room and took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "When the outbreak started, I discovered what the broadcasts were saying about the infected targeting men. I was desperate to survive, so I disguised myself." She gestured to her appearance. "This started as camouflage, but it's become who I am now. My name is Shiloh, And while I wasn't born female, it's who I am. Silence followed her confession. Robin was the first to speak. I knew something was different about you, she said quietly. The way you sometimes hesitated in conversations about before. The care you took with your appearance, even when we were just fortifying barriers.
Are you angry?
Shiloh asked, looking at each face in turn. One of the women, a former nurse named Helen, shook her head. Survival isn't something to apologize for. Besides, who you were before doesn't matter now. We're all different people. Morgan stepped forward, standing beside Shiloh. I'm the same, she admitted. And I think Val was too. Understanding dawned on Robin's face. That's why the infected suddenly found us. They weren't evolving. They were hunting. We should have told you sooner, Shiloh said. Put the group at risk. Patricia, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. We're all that's left of humanity as far as we know. Who the hell cares what gender anyone was or is? The only thing that matters is surviving together. Relief washed over Shiloh. Not everyone might be as accepting as their small group, but it was a start. In the months that followed, their group grew cautiously, taking in survivors regardless of origin, but with clear rules about maintaining feminine presentation for safety. Shiloh and Morgan helped newcomers similar to themselves adapt, teaching makeup techniques and behavioral adjustments that might mean the difference between life and death. They eventually established a new sanctuary in a small gated community, houses separated enough to prevent a complete disaster if infected breached their perimeter. Gardens flourished in former lawns, and rain collection systems ensured fresh water. They even rescued some chickens from an abandoned farm, providing eggs and occasionally meat. Shiloh continued wearing her signature burgundy skirts and cream blouses, clothes that had become part of her identity rather than merely a disguise. Her brown hair grew out naturally, replacing the wig she'd initially depended on. Daily makeup became less about passing and more about self-expression, a small normalcy in their abnormal world. One evening, while tending to the vegetable garden, Robin approached her with a small package wrapped in newspaper. Found this during today's scavenging run, she said, offering it to Shiloh. Thought of you immediately. Inside was a silver necklace with a pendant, a phoenix rising from flames. Shiloh ran her finger over the delicate metalwork. It reminded me of what you told me once, Robin explained, about becoming someone new from the ashes of who you were before. Seems appropriate. Tears welled in Shiloh's eyes as Robin fastened the necklace around her neck. The cool metal settled against her skin, a perfect weight. Thank you, she whispered. You know, Robin said thoughtfully, in all the old stories, apocalypses weren't just endings. They were revelations. The Greek word actually means unveiling. Maybe that's what this has been for many of us. The world had to end for us to discover who we really are. Shiloh looked out over their community, women working together, supporting each other through the end of one world and the painful birth of another. Some had been women all their lives. Others had discovered themselves through necessity. All had found strength they never knew they possessed. I used to pray for rescue, Shiloh admitted. For the military to come, for scientists to find a cure, for everything to go back to normal. Now, I'm not sure what normal even means. Maybe we get to decide that for ourselves now, Robin suggested. That night, as Shiloh prepared for bed in the house she shared with 3 others, she caught her reflection in the mirror. The face that looked back was still recognizably hers, but transformed by more than makeup. Confidence had shaped her expressions, hardship had strengthened her resolve, and acceptance had softened her eyes. She touched the phoenix pendant at her throat and smiled. In the strangest of circumstances, she had found herself. The world had ended, but Shiloh had only just begun. The infected still roamed beyond their walls. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time since the outbreak, Shiloh wasn't simply surviving, she was living. Her pink sundress and white cardigan hung in the closet, mementos of her first steps into this new identity. Her burgundy skirts and cream blouses filled her dresser, daily reminders of who she had become. The zombie apocalypse had revealed many truths about humanity, about survival, about the fragility of civilization. But for Shiloh, the most important revelation had been about herself. In a world where simply existing had become an act of defiance, embracing her true identity was perhaps the most revolutionary act of all.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!